The country receives a negative outlook from an international credit rating agency. Good evening, Bahamas. I'm Altaviz Munnings. Welcome to the Bahamas Tonight, the National Report. There's good and bad news tonight regarding the Bahamas' credit rating. While the government has some breathing room because it avoided a further downgrade at this point, unfortunately, the outlook has changed. Tonight, our Clint Watson joins me live with the details that are hot off the press and how this decision was reached. Good evening, Clint. Couldn't this have caught us by surprise?
Actually, Altaviz, you're very correct. This is not by surprise. The government knew it would get to this, but the concern was to ensure the credit rating didn't drop to junk status. They managed to achieve that, and so the negative outlook now sets the parameters to what needs to take place to begin climbing again. But first, let's take a closer look at what this credit rating actually means. The Bahamas' outlook has been changed to negative by international credit ratings agency Moody'S. The announcement made today on the company's website and through a press release. Moody'S notes that while the outlook has been changed to negative, it confirms the rating still stands at Baa, avoiding a further downgrade to what would be the lowest rating on the chart. Now, the credit rating agency attributes the Bahamas maintaining its previous rating on the government's announcements to stabilize the debt and fiscal consolidation. Also, the revision of GDP has supported an improvement in quantitative metrics. Now, Moody'S notes that despite higher government borrowing needs, government liquidity risk remains contained. Now, regarding the negative outlook, this came as a result of the potential downside risk to the fiscal consolidation process posed by weaker than expected growth. Now, exposure to climate-related shocks in the form of hurricanes and implementation risks associated with expenditure increasing more than the rate of revenue growing. Moody'S was clear that if there is an absence in obtaining a successful fiscal consolidation, the Bahamas' fiscal and credit profile would likely weaken. What's also important to note is that the agency took into consideration the liabilities stemming from state-owned enterprises and like the Bank of the Bahamas, which would lead to a further deterioration of the government's fiscal strength should these materialize on its balance sheet. Now, it's also important to note that Moody's review downgrade was prompted by a significant deterioration in the Bahamas' fiscal position that was revealed earlier this year. However, in Moody's opinion, the Free National Movement government's fiscal consolidation program, if successfully implemented, could stabilize government debt metrics. The government has announced a series of measures to rein in expenditure and enhance revenues. The authorities are targeting a 10% cut in current spending in addition to a hiring freeze. On the revenue front, the government has taken steps to strengthen tax enforcement, particularly in real property tax collections, where evasion is relatively high, as well as reinforcing customs revenue administration to raise additional income. Now, the authorities anticipate a substantial reduction in the deficit this year. Key drivers, though, will be no hurricanes, which drew the cost of government expenditure up and debt up as well, and the ability to reduce the deficit. Measures that we have already begun to see, like the transferring of bad loans and debt at the Bank of the Bahamas to the private collections company Resolve. Moody's says it will require strict compliance by the government to ensure the credit rating is not further lowered. Altaviz?
So, Clint, I know you had said that this does not mean that there will be a downgrade. However, you just got information in from the Minister of Finance, Deputy Prime Minister, the Honorable Peter Turnquest, on the situation.
Actually, you're quite correct. We just got this press release handed to me just coming onto air just now, and the Minister of Finance is saying today that Moody's decision, while not surprising, is an endorsement of the government's plan to deliver on its fiscal consolidation initiatives and eliminate any perceived risk to investor confidence. Now, he says that a lot of what Moody's has said why they did not downgrade is because of the government's prudent management and fiscal responsibility. He says the government is also resolving to bring greater accountability, transparency, and sound fiscal management principles to bear on the country's finances. Improvements in fiscal management and policy outcomes are being promoted through the planned introduction of fiscal responsibility legislation, which will target a number of areas in the government. In the area of revenue administration, the Deputy Prime Minister says work is continuing to improve compliance as a means of protecting yields and promoting tax efficiencies and fairness. He said the government is optimistic that economic growth prospects will gain more traction as the fiscal year progresses. The Bahamas has an excellent track record, he says, in servicing its debt obligations, and by using the risk policy mix, the government is committed to delivering a positive fiscal and economic outcome for the country. So as we said, Altaviz, no surprise by the government. They are prepared to ensure that the country is put on the right footing and to begin improving that credit rating. Live in the newsroom, I'm Clint Watson.